Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining our DrayTek 2016 Product Overview webinar. My name is Mia Athawale. I'm the Technical Product Manager for the DrayTek line of products at ABP Technology. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our Technical Director, Henry Castillo. He is joining us today to provide his insight on some of the features of DrayTek routers, as well as take your questions in the chat window. So you can type your questions and we will try to address them during the course of the webinar. We'll try to answer as many as we can, but if we run out of time, we will email you the information that you need. So let's begin. So today is going to be an introductory webinar for people who are new to DrayTek. We will start with a quick introduction to the company and discuss the amazing value DrayTek offers to SMBs with their popular multi-WAN VPN routers. We will also discuss how ITSPs can benefit from the inbuilt VoIP features on the routers. And also for ISPs and large multi-site projects, how DrayTek's centralized management system, the ACS, ties in neatly with its routers and access points to offer a complete solution. This will be followed by an overview of the product line and the models that are popular in the US. So if you've already been using DrayTek routers, at the end we will talk a little bit about some of the newer models that got introduced in the past few months. And also our recommended bundles to get the most out of these devices. We will also introduce the ACS management system in some detail. I would also like to highlight some of DrayTek's strengths and innovative feature offerings that make it different from other competing brands in the market. Afterward, we will have a quick demo of the dual-WAN 2925 router, which is our most popular model. We use it in-house, and I'd like to show you how we've set it up and how feature-rich it is. Now, if you're experiencing any audio problems or problems with the video, let us know through the chat window. So let me give you a quick overview of the company if you're not yet familiar with DrayTek or just started using DrayTek routers. DrayTek is a networking solutions manufacturer from Taiwan. They are popular all over the world, especially UK, Europe, Asia, for the feature-rich business routers, firewalls, and VPN gateways. DrayTek was one of the first global companies to introduce VPNs for teleworkers and dual-WAN routers to the SMB market. So these solutions were, before DrayTek, these solutions were limited to enterprises. DrayTek made them available to SMBs. Thousands of DrayTek devices are sold worldwide every year. Last year, DrayTek sold close to 500,000 devices globally. UK is one of their biggest markets. You will find that DrayTek is a household name in UK. Although still relatively new to USA, DrayTek is rapidly becoming a popular choice as a feature-rich SMB router. So let's look at some of DrayTek's successful deployments around the world. Their biggest success has been with Vodafone in Netherlands. Vodafone, as you know, is a major internet service provider, and it chose DrayTek as a standard CPE router of choice in Netherlands. Vodafone has about 50,000 DrayTek routers deployed to their customers, and they keep adding more every day. Moreover, all these devices are managed through a central interface with DrayTek's ACS centralized management system, which we will look at later. Around the globe, British Telecom, Siemens, Pizza Hut have all had large multi-site deployments with DrayTek routers. From providing 4G connectivity to a fleet of buses to a citywide smart bike solution, DrayTek routers have seen numerous applications. As you can see, last year, Network World named DrayTek as one of the best VPN routers for small business. So what makes DrayTek different? Of their 250 employees worldwide, 60% are research and development. This makes DrayTek a very innovative company, capable of developing customized solutions for niche market segments. It closely works with its local partners to identify these market segments. In USA, that's ABP Technology. We are their exclusive partner. We work very closely with them for adding new features that benefit our US customers. Since DrayTek is a small and focused company, they have a faster speed to market than their larger competitors. Also, DrayTek has been perfecting router hardware and software for over a decade. So they enjoy a great reputation in terms of quality, as we ourselves have found by using them in-house for a number of years in ABP Technology. We see extremely low returns on DrayTek products. These routers are known worldwide for their reliability. So we hear from customers all the time who have moved from brands such as SonicWall, Microtech, WatchGuards to DrayTek, considering the features and performance for SMB market. So how does DrayTek compare with these brands? We observe that some manufacturers like SonicWall focus more on their enterprise products. Their SMB products are just a scaled-down version that follow the same enterprise pricing and licensing model. This can get quite expensive for SMBs. There are some other dual-WAN routers in the market that focus on SMBs, but they do not offer the incredible array of enterprise business features that DrayTek offers you. Other brands are complicated to configure, brands like Microtech, and require a trained full-time technician to deploy. But DrayTek has an intuitive web GUI, and this makes it easy to configure even the most complicated scenarios. So with DrayTek, SMBs can have the same sophisticated enterprise features built into their routers with no recurring licensing or support costs. But DrayTek is not just for SMBs. For service providers and integrators as well, integrators with multi-site projects, visibility and control over their networks is critical. DrayTek has a centralized management software, ACS, which is designed for MSPs and ISPs to see the connectivity status of all their deployed routers. So from a central interface, they can monitor alerts or generate detailed reports for all their customer routers. So ACS can let ISPs and MSPs monitor thousands of DrayTek routers in multi-site deployments. For example, Vodafone that I mentioned before manages about 50,000 from the ACS installation. This makes it very easy to monitor network disruptions, take backups, push firmware and licenses, build VPNs, all through one single interface. Last year, we saw thousands of DrayTek modems deployed by a small ISP in North Carolina, Yatel Telecom. We also saw some very good multi-site projects with DrayTek. Tower Energy, for example, based out of California, deployed DrayTek to all their gas stations and connected them together with IPsec VPNs for a secure private network. They replaced their original MPLS with a secure VPN network at a fraction of the cost. Colonial Energy, also based out of California, had a similar model with about 50 locations connected through VPNs to their central headquarters with DrayTek. So multi-site projects, large multi-site projects are really something that DrayTek does very well. DrayTek is also a great solution that MSPs can standardize on. MSPs can provide their customers a quality product at lower costs with DrayTek. And also because DrayTek is so easy to configure and maintain, MSPs can reduce their own support requirements. They can proactively monitor their customer networks, and this can be offered as a great value-added service to their customers. In fact, you can find an interview that we did with one MSP, UniteTech, based out of Dallas. They have hundreds of DrayTeks deployed to their customers, and they talk about why they choose DrayTek over MikroTik routers for all their deployments. So you can find this interview on YouTube if you have the time. For ITSPs too, with this easy to set up VoIP QoS, it's easy to ensure good audio quality and failover internet connections for redundancy. So DrayTek works great when bundled with VoIP solutions to provide high quality, uninterrupted VoIP service. So what are some of DrayTek's strengths and where does it really shine? The first application I wanted to discuss is if network redundancy is desired in the network. Perhaps you want to use a second internet connection for backup since your primary ISP is not reliable. Or you would like to load balance your network traffic over multiple internet connections for additional capacity. Or maybe you're worried about your VoIP quality and you would like to completely separate your VoIP traffic over a second internet connection while the primary remains for data. All these scenarios would be perfect to deploy DrayTek. Perhaps in your environment, uptime is critical and you need hardware redundancy on your routers in case of power failures. So for people who are already using the 2925, hardware redundancy was a feature which was only available on the mid-size routers 2960 and 3900. But it was recently introduced to the 2925 series last year through a free firmware upgrade. So you can now deploy two 2925 routers in a master-slave mode and they auto-sync their configuration for seamless failover in case of power failures. If you haven't checked it out yet, I encourage you to upgrade your firmware on the 2925 router and look at this feature. Maybe you need to get a customer's network installed in places, in a remote location where there is no internet service available yet. This is where DrayTeks can be deployed with compatible 4G LTE modems. I'd like to caution though that we have a list of supported modems and these can be used. We have modems supported from AT&T, Verizon. These can be used to add 2 more internet connections to your Ethernet router. So DrayTek can be used to provide redundancy and high availability in all these different scenarios. Based on how many WAN ports you need for additional internet connections, we can recommend you the right model. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. Let's talk about VPNs. VPNs have always been DrayTek's area of strength. When they first started, the SMB VPN router was their flagship product, and they keep getting better and better at VPNs. DrayTek supports most of the popular protocols, IPsec, L2TP, PPTP, SSL, for their VPNs. Now, VPNs can be used to connect teleworkers, remote teleworkers to a central office over encrypted secure tunnels, or remote dial-in VPNs as DrayTek calls them. DrayTek has their own Windows VPN client that you can download for free. They also have an Android app. But if you don't want to use DrayTek solution, you can use your device's inbuilt VPN client to connect to the DrayTek router. So any inbuilt VPN client on Windows, Mac, iPhone can be used to connect to DrayTek routers. VPNs are also useful to connect remote branch offices of a company to headquarters and to each other. DrayTek calls them site-to-site VPNs. In fact, this is exactly the type of project DrayTek excels at. So for any company with multiple locations, like a retail chain, car dealership, restaurant franchise, or small boutique hotel chain, point of sale applications, a secure communication between their locations is crucial. So even if you have an expensive MPLS network between branch locations for private communication, it can be inexpensively replaced by site-to-site VPNs between DrayTek routers. And you can just install one of our mid-size routers with hardware redundancy at your headquarters as a hub router in a hub and spoke topology. So just let us know how many remote locations you need to connect, and we will recommend the perfect router for your needs. And you know the best part? VPN capabilities are built into the router. So you do not require the purchase of any additional VPN or security module. It's all built into the router. All DrayTek routers come with an extremely flexible firewall that lets you set up objects based on source and destination IPs and ports, of course, but also URL keywords, time schedules, user profiles, application filters. So it's very flexible. The firewall can be configured to allow a variety of complex filtering rules. So for example, if you want to block an employee from accessing social networking during the day, but just allow 1 hour during lunchtime, that can be achieved with the firewall's flexible rules. Maybe you want to have marketing access to social networks all the time. So all this is possible with the DrayTek firewall. DrayTek routers also have an inbuilt user management system, which is the router's authentication and authorization system. This lets users log in and connect to the internet for a specified time or data quota. And this can work with an external radius server also. So user management can control your employees' access to the internet. It's also useful in hospitality type of applications. For example, a small hotel or cafe where you want to control guest access to the internet. So you have complete control over who has access to the internet and for how long, and prevent your company from getting exposed to illegal or unsafe content. Now I'd like to mention here the web category filter that you see here is the only licensed service on the router. The web category filter allows users to set up filtering rules for website categories. For example, if you want to filter facebook.com, you can just filter the keyword Facebook, and this is inbuilt into the router. You do not need a license for that. But if you want to filter a category, for example, all social networking websites need to be blocked, or all news websites need to be blocked, then this list of websites is maintained in real time by a third-party service, which is why a license is needed for this feature. But this feature has proved to be surprisingly popular with our customers. The same service on competing brands can run you into hundreds of dollars annually. The DrayTek license for the web category filter costs you anywhere from $30 to $60 based on the model annually. So it's a great feature, very useful. How about wireless? So DrayTek doesn't just make routers, they also make really good wireless access points. A really cool feature in the DrayTek routers is the ability to manage the DrayTek access points right from the router's web GUI. So there's no need to log in and configure each access point individually. You can, if you don't have a DrayTek router, the access points are still standalone access points. They can be managed individually. But if you have the DrayTek router in your network, then it just makes deploying access points completely plug and play. So while other popular solutions need a wireless controller to be purchased separately, this feature is built into the DrayTek SMB routers. So our popular routers, the 2925, 2860 series, can manage up to 20 access points centrally. So as soon as a wireless access point is plugged into the network, the setup for that access point becomes completely plug and play. The router pushes a default profile with SSID security parameters automatically to the access point. It can be done in batch mode too. So traffic usage for each access point can also be monitored, and load balancing can be set up between access points based on their signal strength or the traffic they are handling. A new feature recently added to the access points encourages roaming between them based on their signal strength. So all these features ensure that your access points are being efficiently used. So you don't want one or two of them to be overwhelmed while the others are sitting idle. So centralized access point management prevents that and efficiently uses all your access points. So if you're looking to upgrade your wireless network for a more seamless experience or standardize on one consistent solution in your network, DrayTek would be perfect for SMB wireless applications. Before we move on to the demo, another important feature I would like to mention is the intelligent VoIP QoS. QoS is essential for making sure time-sensitive traffic like VoIP is prioritized over other traffic. For example, if someone is streaming video in your network, you don't want your voice calls to suffer because of that. Or if someone just decided to sync their Dropbox. But configuring all the QoS parameters can be challenging for SMBs who are doing it for the first time. You need to set up a lot of different classes, give them priorities. There's a lot of different terminology that you need to learn, like DSCP, class of service. So it can get quite complicated to set up. But if you are an SMB and you're just primarily concerned about your VoIP quality, then DrayTek offers a single checkbox that can detect when a call is being placed and automatically give it the highest priority. It also reserves bandwidth for 2 more VoIP calls than the current number of calls. So it's proactive bandwidth management. So as I mentioned, it gives first priority to your VoIP traffic and also reserves bandwidth for 2 more VoIP calls than the current number of calls. So you are always assured pristine audio quality. We have worked very closely with DrayTek to test and perfect this feature. And this year, we are also working on adding a whole bunch of VoIP monitoring features. So in future firmwares, you are going to see more information about VoIP parameters like jitter, packet loss, MOS scores for each call that is placed through the DrayTek router. So DrayTek offers several such unique features that automate complex network setups. The learning curve on these devices is pretty easy. Once you're comfortable with the setup of the DrayTek routers, you still have all the bells and whistles. So if you want to set up everything manually to your exact specifications, you can do that. But while you're new to the routers, I encourage you to take advantage of all these different wizards and shortcut setups that DrayTek offers. So before we move on to discuss the product lines, Henry, do we have any questions so far?
Amy, yes, we have a couple questions. All right. Thank you for sending the questions. For everybody, there is an option in the GoToMeeting windows, so you can send your questions to. The question is on the dongles. What dongles are supported for LTE connectivity?
So it's better to take a look at the list we have on the website, but because different dongles are supported on different models. But right now, for most of the models offered in USA, we have the Verizon UML 290 dongle supported, and also the AT&T AirCard 340U for US.
Thank you. Another question is, it's in the screen already. Customer was asking if the new standard for Wi-Fi AO2.11ac is supported.
Yes, I'll be talking about that in a minute. So we have several models that are now offering the new Wi-Fi standard.
Another question, and then we can continue. On when you were talking about VPNs, a customer wanted to make sure DrayTek can VPN to Amazon VPC infrastructure. he has a few servers in Amazon AWS, and there's only a select group of routers, VPN clients that can connect. Can DrayTek connect to Amazon VPC network?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
Yes, so we have an application note detailing how to do that on the website. But yes, we've tried and tested it, and it works fine for a site-to-site VPN between the DrayTek router and Amazon VPC.
Thank you. We can continue now.
Okay. So thanks, Henry. Let's take a quick look at the product lines that we sell in USA. There have been some changes as DrayTek brings in the new models that support the new wireless standard, as I mentioned. So DrayTek routers can support a wide variety of WAN interfaces. Cable, ADSL, VDSL, 4G LTE, fiber, depending on the model. So DrayTek offers an extensive range of routers suitable for different sizes of networks and applications. For home users and ITSPs looking for a basic CPE router, we have models with single WAN ports like the 2912 series. For models that support just one VDSL modem built in, we have Vigor 130, also the Vigor 2760 router. The dual-WAN routers are extremely popular with SMBs, especially the 2925 series routers. I'll be showing you a demo of the 2925 router today. We also offer multi-WAN routers for mid-size applications like the 3900 and the 2960. They are suitable for larger projects and offer some advanced features. High throughput, VPN throughput, firewall throughput is higher. And they can support larger networks, Class B networks. So our SMB routers like the 2925, 2860 series, they are available without wireless or with simultaneous dual band Wi-Fi compliant with 802.11 AC protocol. So we have the 2925 AC and 2860 AC that supports the new Wi-Fi standard. For access points too, there have been some changes. So we have both ceiling mounted and desktop access points, AP910C and AP902. So the access point 902 is new, is just in. It's a desktop or wall mounted type of access point. And both these access points support the 802.11 AC protocol. So these are PoE powered devices. They support multiple SSIDs, multiple VLANs, different operating modes like access point or universal repeater. And they have a lot of features for bandwidth management and station control in case of when they're deployed in hotels, for example, or cafes. So we also have various fiber models with SFP ports available for special order, like the 2925FN or 3900 already supports SFP ports. If you have a project that requires support for SFP ports, let us know. We can place an order for you. DrayTek also offers switches. We have a new switch in the lineup, the G1241. This has 24 ports. It's a web smart switch. It's at a really good price point. And what's cool about both the access points and the switches is the ability to configure them centrally from the router's interface. So you don't have to log in and configure every access point or switch individually. If you would like to try this out, we have the switch available already. We also have special firmware for your 2925 router that can let you test switch management. So let us know if you are interested in trying that out. So I think it's time to move on to the demo part of the webinar. If we don't have any questions, I'll be starting the demo in a minute. Okay, so right now I'm logged into the 2925 router that we have deployed at ABP Technology. We use this ourselves. We have been using DrayTek for a lot of years now. So we have first-hand experience about these routers. As you can see, it's a very feature-rich router. So let me start with the load balancing part of the router. So the dashboard shows you that there are 2 WAN Ethernet ports on this router. Both are gigabit. There are 5 LAN gigabit Ethernet ports. There are also 2 USB ports. These ports can be used to connect the LTE dongles. You can connect 2 at a time. So this effectively gives you a total of 4 internet connections on the router. The router can be set up to failover. So you can have one primary internet connection and you can have a failover internet connection set up in case the primary fails. Or you can have load balancing between all 4 WAN internet connections. So the load balancing on DrayTek is a session type of load balancing. So sessions, every time a session is opened, they are load balanced across the different WAN connections based on the speed of the WAN connections. So it's in a ratio of the speed. Now, another cool feature on DrayTek is the WAN budget. This is useful if you have LTE dongles connected to the router as primary. So you can set up your billing cycle here, and the router will give you, send you an alert in case you're about to reach your monthly threshold with your provider. So it can either shut down the WAN interface if you're about to exceed your data usage, or it can send you a mail or SMS alert. The router also offers route policies. So if you don't want to just auto load balance based on the speed of the WAN connections, if you want a more fine-grained type of load balancing setup, then you can do that with the route policies. As you can see, you can match different types of traffic and send it out on a particular WAN interface. This is useful if you're using VoIP and you would like it to always take the same WAN interface to the internet, because your SIP provider wants you to just have one public IP that you're coming from. So this is where you would set that up. A cool new feature, of course, is diagnosing in the route policy. So if you are not sure how the router is sending out any packet going to the internet, you can check it here. It will show you which WAN interface out of 4 the router will use for a particular type of traffic. So the next thing I'd like to show you, since we are short on time, I'd like to jump to the access point management on the routers. So this feature is available in the 2925 and 2860 series right now. As you can see, we have 4 access points connected in our network at the moment. All these 4 access points receive their configuration from the DrayTek router. We have a default profile that we have set up here on the router, and we have all the parameters that we want for both the bands, both the wireless bands, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. We have the SSIDs, the security parameters, all of them set up on the router. So whenever a new access point connects to the network and gets a DHCP IP address from this router, this default profile will be pushed to that access point automatically. So it's plug and play. Devices can start connecting to the access point's SSID right away. The central AP management also offers some maintenance features. So you can maybe you can have firmware pushed to all the access points in batch mode, or you can take backups from the access points centrally without having to log in into each of them individually. It shows you traffic graphs for all the different access points. And another important feature, I think, is load balancing. So as you can see, you can load balance between different access points based on how many stations are connected to an access point. So you can set a threshold, maybe 20. So at the most 20 clients can connect to an access point. But if it's exceeding the number of clients, then the next client trying to connect will be pushed to the next access point. Or you can set up a threshold based on the traffic that each access point is handling. Now, if a client has been idle for too long, you can force it to disconnect from an access point. So that access point can then accept a new client, new wireless client. So this disconnection, this forced disassociation can be done based on how long a client has been idle, or maybe one of the wireless clients has moved away from the access point and its signal strength is very poor. So you can kick off that client from the access point, and then the client can try to connect to a better nearby access point. So all these features make it really easy to deploy Wi-Fi in your network. Let's look at the access points quickly. So this is our ceiling mounted access point that supports the new Wi-Fi protocol 802.11ac. Now, normally you wouldn't have to log in into the access point if you have central AP management on your router. But the access point can also be managed standalone. So this is what I wanted to show you. We have different SSIDs, different VLANs. As you can see, we have different VLANs for voice, security, guest hotspot, all set up on the access point. A new feature that was introduced, and you would notice this with the new firmware once you upgrade your access points, is roaming, AP-assisted client roaming. So you can decide if the signal strength of a client degrades, then falls below a threshold that you set up, the access point will force it to disassociate and connect to the next AP. So the client can roam better. Mobile device management was also a new feature introduced in the latest firmware on the AP900, AP902, AP910Cs. So this feature lets you see what type of devices are connecting to your access point. And based on the type of device detected, you can have certain basic policies. This is a new feature, and I expect it to get more fine-grained as we go along. But right now you can block maybe mobile connections and let PCs connect, or block unknown connections. Another feature I would like to mention is airtime fairness. So what this feature does is, if you have really old PCs or other types of wireless clients in your network, they can bring down the wireless speed for everyone trying to connect to the access point. So with airtime fairness, the router tries to limit these devices that are using really old protocols and hardware, so that everyone else in the network can get faster Wi-Fi experience. This is another very useful feature that was introduced recently. So going back to the router, to the DrayTek router, let's look at the bandwidth management on this router. So the router can manage traffic based on the number of sessions or bandwidth. So if you have different networks or different groups of IPs, you can limit the bandwidth available for each group or individual IP. So this ensures that users that are using bandwidth-heavy applications do not starve other users or other applications in the network. This can also be done based on sessions. So sometimes when there is malware in the network, maybe a user gets infected and they have a really high number of sessions on their computer. And this causes the whole network to slow down. And to prevent this, you can have a maximum number of sessions available for each user. And if any user exceeds this number of sessions, they will be unable to open any more. So you can then see the type of usage in your network, and then you can see if there is a problem with one particular user. Quality of service, as I mentioned, you have all the manual clauses and rules available to you, but just for VoIP, we have this checkbox, really simple, first priority for VoIP, SIP and RTP checkbox. It's enabled by default. All you need to do is choose your particular interface. So if it's a WAN 1 interface that you have connected, or both WAN 1 and WAN 2, you just need to enable this and set your bandwidth. Now this is important though, because you need to always tell your router what bandwidth you have available from your ISP. So this is all that's needed to ensure that the router detects your VoIP calls, always gives them first priority, and also it always reserves bandwidth enough for 2 more VoIP calls than the current number of calls it detects. Now the firewall, as I mentioned, it's a straightforward setup, but I'd like to show you the web content filter and all the different filters that you can apply to the firewall. So this, as I mentioned, is the only feature that requires a license on the router, and you do have a 1-month free trial for this feature. This is very useful for blocking a variety of categories. So if you are deploying DrayTek in a school campus, maybe you have categories defined for child protection. Maybe for employee productivity, you want to block social networking. So there are a lot of options here. You can also whitelist certain websites. So maybe if you want just LinkedIn allowed and everything else on social networking blocked, you can do that too. The keyword filter, the URL content filter with keywords is inbuilt. You don't need any license. So you want to block individual websites, you can do that. That's built into the router. The router also has some predefined application filters for filtering maybe torrents or instant messenger type of applications. And this is again free. It's inbuilt into the router. So since we are almost out of time, I'd like to show you one last application that I think is really cool. It's the temperature sensor. So a variety of different applications are available for the USB ports on the router. You can have the LTE dongle that we talked about before, but also you can have a temperature sensor connected to the router. And this detects the temperature of it's useful for detecting the temperature of your server room and send you alerts in case it exceeds a threshold that you've set. So this was the 2925 router and access points. And now I'd like to show you the auto configuration server, ACS software, that lets you manage all your deployed DrayTek routers and access points from a central interface. So this is our demo server running in the cloud. As you can see, we have different networks, sub-networks here. So we have our own production network, some customer networks. The way the ACS works, it's a multi-tenant model. So you can have the license for the ACS, it's based on the number of routers that you want to manage. So if you have 100 routers deployed in your network, you need a 100 node license. If you have 500 routers deployed in your network, you need a 500 node license, so on and so forth. The minimum nodes that you can use the ACS for is 25. That's the minimum. So let me show you our production network very quickly. We have 3 routers here right now. We have our own, we have one in UK, we have a test router here. And as you can see, all the parameters on the router are available for me here to view as well as to configure. So since the ACS is a multi-tenant model, you can set up different users with different privileges. You can have admin users or just operator users who can log in into the ACS and monitor your routers but not change them. They can just monitor for alerts. And all these routers can also be seen in a Google map. So if a device loses its connection, you will see that in a map. You can have all the locations of your customers fed into the ACS. So it's a really handy way of keeping track of all your devices. Another really cool feature of the ACS is the VPN wizard. So while the router lets you manually configure VPNs between your different routers, the ACS makes it really simple. It's a drag and drop graphical format in the ACS. As you can see, I have my production router connecting to 4 different routers. One of them is managed through this ACS. The others are not yet. It also shows you the type of VPN and the direction of the VPN. So the arrow indicates who's the server, VPN server, and you can see who's the VPN client. The ACS is really useful for pushing batch firmware upgrades to all your routers or taking backups from all your routers. And it also has a big variety of reports that you can pull for all your networks. For example, if I want to see the WAN graph of my production network for the last week, for example. So it lets me see all the WAN traffic on one particular router or a network of routers, both WAN 1 and WAN 2, to make sure both of them are being utilized correctly. Also is useful for seeing firmware, the versions. Let's say I have multiple 2925 routers in my network at the moment, and I want to make sure all of them are on the latest firmware. I can do that. I can check the firmware on all of them together. Or if I want to check the IP addresses that are configured on each router in my network, I can do this too. So with WAN 1, WAN 2, LAN, I can show you all the IP addresses in my network. So it's really simple to keep track of all your deployed routers with this software. Now at the moment, you would require a license, like I said, a 25, 50, 100, 500 node license to purchase this software and then deploy it on your own server. But ABP is also starting a new cloud hosted version of this software. So at the moment, if you email us, we can give you a demo account to our cloud hosted server. And at the moment, it's free. So I would encourage you to take advantage of this because next year it's going to be a subscription type of model. So you are no longer limited to having at least 25 routers before it makes sense to purchase the ACS. You can just have one router on the ACS and try it out. So I think we are almost out of time. Henry, do you have any more questions before we wrap up?
Yes, we did, but those were answered already.
Okay.
During your presentation.
All right. I don't want to take too long. I'd like to wrap up now. So if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to call us. You can also email us your feedback at webinars@abptech.com. And a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you next week. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. There is a couple more that are coming at last minute. So can you go back and very quickly show, I know we don't have time, how to set the bandwidth for or the route the traffic.
You mean the route policies?
Yeah, route policy.
Okay, so let me show you an example that we have here. We have a PBX at this IP address 10.10.10.8, and we want to make sure that when it goes out to the internet, it always uses our WAN 2 interface and a particular public IP on that WAN 2 interface that we have defined. Because we have both WAN 1 and WAN 2 on this router, we have a number of public IP addresses for both the WAN interfaces. So we want to make sure that one particular is being used. So I would match the source IP to that of my PBX and the interface to that of WAN 2, and I would choose the IP address that I want this traffic to use all the time, and that's about it. Now, if I want this route to fail over, in case WAN 2 fails, I want to make sure that my traffic is still being routed out, I can set up a failover policy. So I can fail over maybe to the default WAN at the time. It could be WAN 1. Or I could fail to some other route policy that I have, like so it can be set up in a hierarchical fashion. But yeah, it's pretty simple to set up route policies. I can even send out traffic on VPN if I want to.
Yeah, another quick question. Everybody, we do have free on-site full-day training certification for DrayTek. I just checked DrayTekUSA.com. I think the next one is going to be in Chicago, but we are always traveling and scheduling on full-day trainings on this. May I have a question on the 2120? Is it available? If it is not, then do we expect the 2925 being gone as well or not?
No. So the 2120 N Plus had Wi-Fi that it didn't have the new 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, so DrayTek phased that out, the 2120 series. Now we have the 2912N that you can use in the meantime. The 2912 has one WAN port and it has 4 LAN ports, and you can also have one of its LAN ports converted to WAN, so you can have 2 LAN ports if you want. So that's the best replacement for 2120 at the moment, the 2912 series. As far as the 2925 series is concerned, it's not going away. The only change in this series is the 2925N Plus router got replaced by the 2925 AC. Everything else stays as it is. So we have the non-wireless version 2925. We have the single band 2.4 gigahertz wireless version 2925N, and we have the 2925 AC.
Thank you, Mia. I think we can finish. There is one more question on how to the last one. I promise. How to set a specific bandwidth for VoIP? Let's say 1 meg.
Yes. So with bandwidth limit, if you know what IP address, maybe it's a PBX that you're coming from, you can set that up. You can limit the bandwidth available to it. Or maybe a VLAN, you have a separate voice VLAN. You can control bandwidth available to that voice VLAN with bandwidth limit. Or you can set up a separate QoS class, but I would just advise you to use the automatic first priority in this case. If you want, you can set up manual classes and everything.
Thank you, Mia. I mean, there's a lot of little details. We have some application notes, and we can get into more details or next time. I think when time is up, Mia, is almost 1 hour.
Yes. So as I was saying, we'll send you a recording of this webinar next week for your reference and to share with your colleagues. And you can visit us at DrayTekUSA.com for complete product information. Once again, thank you all for joining and hope you have a great day. Thank you.